Are your habits secretly sabotaging the way others see you? In this video, we'll uncover 15 destructive behaviors that instantly lower your respect and reveal how Stoic wisdom can help you break free. Stick around, because the last habit might just change how you see yourself forever. Number 1. Gossiping. Gossiping, oh man, where do we even start? It seems like such a harmless habit, doesn't it? A quick chat with a friend, a bit of back and forth about someone you both know. But here's the thing, gossiping has this subtle way of poisoning not only the way others see us, but how we see ourselves, too. Stoicism, as you might know, encourages us to focus on what we can control and to avoid getting entangled in the things outside our grasp, like the drama of others' lives. You've probably noticed that when someone constantly engages in gossip, they begin to lose credibility. Sure, it might feel good in the moment, trading information or passing judgment about people who aren't around to defend themselves. It's a cheap thrill, isn't it? But people start to see through it. They'll wonder, if you're talking about someone else behind their back, what's stopping you from doing the same to them? The moment you indulge in gossip, you're branding yourself as someone who can't be trusted. Not exactly a great reputation to build, right? Gossip is often the easy way out. It gives you a sense of connection, of belonging, as if you're in the know or sharing something others might not. It provides an illusion of importance, like you're part of some exclusive club. But let's be real, when you rely on gossip to maintain relationships, what are you really doing? You're engaging in something that doesn't require depth or substance. Instead of talking about ideas, philosophies, or the things that truly matter, you're sinking into petty, low-level chatter. That's a surefire way to undermine your own personal growth and attract people who are more interested in drama than in anything meaningful. It's also worth noting that gossip usually thrives on insecurity. When you gossip, you're often trying to elevate yourself by putting others down. But this is a toxic cycle. It gives you a brief sense of superiority, like you're better because you know something about someone else's life. But deep down, it just reflects a lack of real self-esteem. Think about it, why do we feel the need to tear others down in the first place? Isn't that a sign that we're not truly confident in who we are? From a Stoic perspective, gossiping is a waste of mental energy. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, constantly reminded himself to focus on what's within his control and to steer clear of distractions. Gossiping is, in essence, a distraction. It pulls your attention away from what really matters, your own growth, your own actions, your own virtues. Instead of spending time worrying about others or indulging in their failures, you should be focusing on how you can better yourself. How can you cultivate wisdom, courage, and self-discipline if your head is always wrapped up in the lives of people who don't even matter in the grand scheme of things? And let's not forget the impact gossiping has on your relationships. The more you indulge in it, the more you push people away. Think about it, if you're the type of person who's constantly talking about others behind their backs, how long do you think it will be before people start questioning whether they can trust you with their own secrets? The moment someone starts gossiping about others to you, they're signaling that they probably do the same about you. Trust gets eroded, and before you know it, you're isolated. Not exactly the kind of relationships that will support your personal growth or long-term happiness. Now, I know it can be tempting. The urge to spill the latest juicy tidbit, to vent or share something that feels oh so satisfying, is hard to ignore. But think about what it's costing you. Every moment spent gossiping is a moment you could have spent developing your own character. So, next time you feel the pull to dive into some gossip, take a step back. Remind yourself of what you really want to achieve, what kind of person you want to become. Is it really worth sacrificing your integrity for the fleeting pleasure of gossip? The answer, I think, is pretty clear. Number 2. Complaining constantly. Complaining, a habit that feels like a quick vent but ends up being a heavy anchor on your personal growth. Let's not sugarcoat it, Nobody likes to hear constant complaints. Whether it's about the weather, your job, or the minor inconveniences life throws your way, incessant complaining has a way of wearing people down. It's not just about the noise you create in conversations, it's about the energy you radiate. And spoiler alert, it's not the kind of energy that draws people in. At its core, constant complaining is a mindset issue. It's not about the circumstances but about the lens through which you view them. When someone complains all the time, it screams, "I'm powerless." It signals to others that you've surrendered your agency and are simply choosing to wallow instead of looking for solutions. Now, don't get me wrong, everyone needs to vent occasionally. Life isn't all sunshine and roses, and sharing your struggles can build connections. But there's a massive difference between venting and setting up camp in Complaintville. Here's the thing. When you're always complaining, you unknowingly shape your identity as someone who focuses on the negative. People start associating you with that energy. They might not even realize it, but over time, they'll feel drained just being around you. Your words become repetitive, predictable, and ultimately unproductive. You might think you're bonding over shared frustrations, but in reality, you're just digging a pit for yourself and inviting others to join you in it. What makes this habit particularly damaging is how it trains your brain. The more you complain, the more you reinforce those neural pathways. It's like walking a dirt road over and over until it becomes a trench. The smallest inconveniences start to feel monumental because your brain is conditioned to dwell on them. It's a self-fulfilling loop. You notice more things to complain about, you complain, and then you notice even more. The result? A life where gratitude and optimism have no room to breathe. Now let's flip the coin for a second. Imagine you meet someone who never complains. Even when they face tough times, they approach them with a calm, solution-oriented mindset. How do you feel around that person? Inspired? Relaxed? That's because they embody a sense of control over their lives. And isn't that what Stoic philosophy teaches us? The idea that while we can't control external events, we can absolutely control how we respond to them? Complaining is the opposite of that. It's letting the external world dictate your inner state. If you find yourself stuck in this habit, the first step is awareness. Start catching yourself mid-complaint. Ask yourself, is this complaint necessary? Does it add value to the conversation or my life? Often, you'll find the answer is no. Then, challenge yourself to reframe the situation. Instead of, "Ugh, my boss gave me so much work today," try, "I have a lot to do, but it's a chance to prove what I'm capable of." It might feel forced at first, but over time, this rewiring changes your perspective. And let's not ignore the social impact. Complaining constantly makes you less approachable, less magnetic. People gravitate toward those who uplift, not those who drag down. When you're stuck in a cycle of complaints, you limit your opportunities to connect meaningfully with others. It's not that people don't care about your struggles, they do. But when your identity becomes tied to being that person who always complains, it's hard for them to see anything else. So, here's a challenge for you. The next time you feel the urge to complain, pause. Take a deep breath and redirect that energy. Maybe it's a chance to find a solution, to express gratitude, or simply to let it go. You'll not only lighten your own mental load but also show others that you're someone who can rise above challenges. And trust me, that's the kind of vibe people respect and admire. Number 3, being passive-aggressive. Let's talk about passive-aggressiveness, one of those habits that can instantly kill your vibe and make people think less of you. You know what I'm talking about, the silent digs, the sarcastic remarks disguised as jokes, or the classic "I'm fine" when everything about your energy screams the opposite. It's like you're serving bitterness on a platter, but instead of being direct about it, you wrap it in a bow of subtlety and confusion. And guess what? It's not cute. It's not clever. It's just frustrating. People pick up on this behavior quicker than you'd think. They might not call it out every time, but deep down, they know something's off. Why? Because being passive-aggressive feels like trying to solve a puzzle where half the pieces are missing. And no one enjoys feeling like they're walking on eggshells, trying to figure out if your "I don't care" actually means "I care too much" but don't know how to say it. At its core, passive-aggressiveness comes from an unwillingness, or inability, to confront issues head-on. Maybe it's fear of conflict. Maybe it's insecurity. Or maybe it's just a bad habit that's been left unchecked for too long. Whatever the reason, this behavior shows a lack of emotional maturity. It signals to others that you're not ready to handle situations like an adult, and honestly, that can make people lose respect for you. Now, don't get it twisted. Nobody's saying you have to turn into some kind of confrontation-loving warrior. Being direct doesn't mean being aggressive or rude. It just means owning your feelings and communicating them clearly. If something bothers you, say it. If you're upset, explain why. It's not about starting fights, it's about finding solutions. Here's the kicker: passive-aggressive behavior doesn't just hurt your relationships, it hurts you. Think about it. Every time you choose sarcasm over honesty or a cold shoulder over a candid conversation, you're bottling up emotions that need to be released. And bottled up emotions have a nasty habit of spilling over at the worst possible times. Over time, this can lead to unnecessary stress, resentment, and even a sense of isolation. On top of that, people tend to avoid those who are passive-aggressive. Why? Because it's exhausting to deal with. Nobody wants to decode hidden meanings or decipher subtle digs in everyday interactions. It's like signing up for a game where the rules are intentionally unclear. Most people would rather not play. If you're catching yourself slipping into passive-aggressive tendencies, don't panic. Awareness is the first step. Start by paying attention to your patterns. Do you tend to shut down when you're upset? Do you rely on sarcasm to express frustration? Recognizing the behavior is half the battle. Next, practice honesty. It might feel uncomfortable at first, maybe even terrifying, but it gets easier with time. You don't have to spill your deepest feelings in every interaction, but you can start small. If a friend does something that annoys you, instead of rolling your eyes or making a snarky comment, try saying, "Hey, can we talk about something? This bothered me, and I want to clear the air." Simple, right? Also, remember to stay calm. There's a fine line between assertiveness and aggression. The goal is to express your feelings without pointing fingers or escalating the situation. Use I statements instead of you accusations. For example, say, "I felt hurt when this happened," instead of, "You always do this." Small shifts in language can make a huge difference. Ultimately, ditching passive-aggressiveness is about valuing yourself and your relationships enough to embrace honesty. It's about choosing clarity over confusion, connection over games, and growth over stagnation. And trust me, the respect you'll earn from others and yourself will be worth every awkward conversation along the way. So, stop hiding behind the sarcasm and start speaking your truth. Life's too short for cryptic messages and unspoken frustrations. Be real, be bold, and watch how people start to see you in a whole new light. Number 4, being overly judgmental of others. Being overly judgmental of others is one of those habits that seems almost ingrained in human nature. It's easy, right? You see someone do something, and bam, your mind is already calculating how they measure up, whether they're doing it right, or how they stack against your own standards. But here's the problem: judging others isn't just a habit that reflects badly on the people you're judging, it does serious damage to you too. Let's be real for a second. When you constantly judge people, what does it say about you? It's not just about putting others down to make yourself feel superior. It's about creating a mindset where everything and everyone around you becomes a point of comparison. You're not seeing people for who they truly are, you're filtering them through the lens of your own biases, fears, and insecurities. And that's not only unfair to them, it's unfair to you. It keeps you stuck in this loop of negativity and makes it harder to appreciate the diversity of human experiences. Stoicism, at its core, teaches us that we don't control what other people do, and we certainly don't have the right to judge their choices. What we can control, however, is how we respond to them. It's not about condemning or praising the actions of others, but rather focusing on our own responses. Marcus Aurelius, for instance, had this profound understanding that people act based on their own circumstances, perceptions, and histories. So, when you judge someone too harshly, you're ignoring that complex web of factors that might be influencing their behavior. In essence, you're judging them without understanding them, and that's a surefire way to create resentment, both in yourself and in others. But the issue runs deeper. The more you judge others, the more you're actually judging yourself. Think about it, when you place all your energy into picking apart someone else's life, aren't you just avoiding your own growth? The energy spent scrutinizing someone else's flaws is energy you could be using to examine your own. Instead of looking inward to refine your own actions and thoughts, you're projecting onto others. You're putting all this mental energy into comparing, ranking, and assessing people as if that's somehow going to elevate you. On top of that, constantly being judgmental creates a kind of mental cage. Instead of embracing life with all its ups and downs, all its strange, unpredictable twists, you start to filter everything through a lens of right and wrong. There's no room for nuance, no space to appreciate that people are complicated and multifaceted. You begin to see the world in terms of black and white when, in reality, it's all shades of gray. And you end up stuck in a mindset where every difference is a threat to your own sense of stability. Here's where it gets interesting from a Stoic perspective. Judgment often comes from our own inability to accept the world as it is. The Stoics believe that life is full of chaos, unpredictability, and things outside our control. And yet, we're constantly trying to impose our own expectations on others, thinking that if they conform to our ideas of what's right, everything will be easier. But life doesn't work that way. People are messy, flawed, and complicated, and when we judge them for that, we're essentially denying their humanity. We're turning them into mere objects of our own scrutiny rather than acknowledging them as individuals with their own struggles and experiences. Being overly judgmental also locks you into a position where you're never truly free. You're bound by your own rigid expectations, constantly assessing, criticizing, and ranking the actions of others. It's exhausting. Imagine how much energy that takes up, all that mental effort spent on things that don't even matter. The moment you let go of judgment, you free yourself. You stop getting bogged down by every little thing someone else does. Instead of being on the lookout for flaws, you become someone who's present, someone who focuses on their own development and lets others live their lives without interference. There's another side to this too. When you stop judging, you also stop living in constant fear of being judged. You let go of that need for external validation. You stop measuring your worth against others, and that's a huge shift. You realize that your value doesn't come from comparing yourself to someone else, it comes from your actions, your mindset, and your ability to respond to life with grace and acceptance. At the end of the day, being overly judgmental of others doesn't just make you seem small, it also keeps you stuck. It prevents you from seeing people for who they are, and it stops you from growing into the person you're meant to become. So next time you catch yourself judging someone, try stepping back. Breathe. Remember that you don't know their story, and you certainly don't control their choices. Focus on what you can control, your own growth, your own actions, and your own response to the world around you. That's where the real power lies. Number 5. Chasing instant gratification. Let's talk about instant gratification. You know, that little itch in your brain that screams, "I want it now." It's seductive, isn't it? Whether it's mindlessly scrolling on your phone, indulging in junk food, or choosing the easy path over the one that actually leads somewhere meaningful, chasing instant gratification feels good for a moment. But here's the kicker: it never lasts, and the aftermath often feels worse than the fleeting pleasure it gave you. When you give into instant gratification, what you're really doing is trading long-term growth for short-term comfort. It's like saying, "I'd rather feel good now and suffer later." And you might not realize it immediately, but over time, this habit creates a life that feels stagnant, hollow, and aimless. People notice it too. They see it in your lack of discipline, in the way you flit from one easy fix to another without sticking to anything that actually matters. It's not a good look. Here's the thing: instant gratification has a way of eroding your character. It makes you appear weak-willed and incapable of handling discomfort. And let's face it, discomfort is where the magic happens. It's where you grow, build resilience, and prove to yourself, and others, that you've got what it takes to tackle life head-on. When you constantly give in to the urge for immediate rewards, you're essentially telling the world, "I'd rather take the easy way out." And that's not the kind of energy people respect. It's not even about what others think, though. Deep down, you know you're selling yourself short. You know you're capable of so much more if you just step away from the lure of instant pleasures and focus on the bigger picture. But let's dig deeper. Why is this habit so dangerous? Because it trains your brain to crave dopamine hits for every little thing. You start associating progress with quick wins instead of real effort. Over time, you might lose the ability to delay gratification altogether. Patience? Out the window. Perseverance? Nope. The discipline to stick to a goal, even when it's tough? Forget about it. It's a slippery slope, and once you're on it, climbing back up feels nearly impossible. The Stoics would call this enslavement, being ruled by your impulses rather than your rational mind. To them, a life worth living is one where you master your desires, not the other way around. They tell you that true freedom comes from self-control, from knowing when to say no to the things that don't serve your greater purpose. And let's be honest, how many of those quick fixes truly serve you? How many of them actually add value to your life? Now, don't get it twisted. There's nothing wrong with enjoying life's little pleasures. The problem is when they take over, when they distract you from the things that really matter. It's about balance. You don't have to be a monk, but you do have to ask yourself, is this helping me become who I want to be? Here's a pro tip: start practicing the art of saying no. Not just to others, but to yourself. The next time you feel the pull of instant gratification, pause. Take a moment to think about what you're giving up in exchange for that fleeting hit of pleasure. Is it worth it? 9 times out of 10, the answer will be no. And let's talk about how people perceive you when you chase instant gratification. It's not just about you losing focus, it's about how others view your priorities. They see someone who can't commit to the grind, who's easily swayed by shiny distractions. Over time, this chips away at your credibility. People respect those who stay the course, who work for something greater than a momentary high. They don't admire those who constantly fall into the trap of easy now, hard later. So, how do you break free? Start small. Set one goal that requires delayed gratification, a workout routine, a project, even something as simple as saving a bit of money instead of spending it. Stick to it. Every time you resist the urge for an easy win, you're strengthening your self-control. And trust me, that self-control? It's like a superpower. It changes how you see yourself and how others see you. Suddenly, you're the person who can wait, who can endure, who can push through discomfort to achieve something meaningful. In the end, chasing instant gratification is a habit that feels good in the moment but robs you of so much more. The antidote? Focus on the long game. build a life where your actions align with your values, where you're not just chasing the next quick hit but working towards something that truly matters. People will notice the shift. More importantly, you'll notice it. And that's when life starts to feel really, really good. Number 6, poor hygiene. Let's get real. Poor hygiene is a fast track to losing respect before you even get a chance to say a word. It's one of those things people notice instantly, whether they admit it to you or not. The way you present yourself, how you smell, how clean you look, even how well you've taken care of your nails, says a lot about you. And unfortunately, if hygiene isn't your strong suit, people tend to make some pretty harsh assumptions. Why does it matter so much? Because hygiene is one of those unspoken rules of social interaction. It's a basic courtesy. When you don't take care of yourself, it sends a message, intentional or not, that you don't care about others either. And while that might not be true, perception often outweighs reality. Let's talk about the obvious stuff first: bad breath, body odor, greasy hair. These are the kind of things that make people lean back when they should be leaning in. It's not personal, it's just instinct. Our senses are hardwired to pick up on these things, and unfortunately, they can create barriers you didn't even realize were there. Imagine trying to make a great first impression while someone's distracted by an overpowering smell or a stain on your shirt. Not ideal, right? But hygiene goes deeper than just surface-level cleanliness. It's about showing respect for yourself and the spaces you share with others. Think about it. If you can't be bothered to maintain your personal hygiene, what does that say about how you handle other responsibilities? People might start questioning your work ethic, your attention to detail, or even your reliability. Harsh? Maybe. But that's how the world works sometimes. And it's not just about how others see you. Poor hygiene can mess with your confidence too. When you feel clean and put together, you carry yourself differently. You stand taller. You walk into a room with a little more swagger. But when you're self-conscious about your appearance or worried about how you might smell, that confidence takes a hit. It's like having an invisible weight on your shoulders, holding you back from being your best self. Now, let's not overcomplicate this. Maintaining good hygiene isn't rocket science. It's about building simple habits and sticking to them. Take showers regularly. Use deodorant. Brush and floss your teeth. Wear clean clothes. These might seem like no-brainers, but you'd be surprised how often people overlook the basics. And here's a pro tip: pay attention to the small stuff. Trim your nails. Wash your hands often. Keep your shoes clean. Even things like keeping your eyebrows tidy or using a good skincare routine can make a difference. These details might seem minor, but they add up. They show that you care about how you present yourself, and that doesn't go unnoticed. Now, some people might argue, why should I care what others think? Shouldn't they judge me for who I am, not how I look or smell? Sure, in a perfect world, that would be nice. But the reality is, we live in a world where first impressions matter. And hygiene is a big part of that. It's not about being shallow, it's about creating an environment where people feel comfortable around you. Good hygiene isn't just about looking polished, it's about taking responsibility for yourself. It's about respecting the people you interact with and making sure they feel at ease in your presence. Because let's face it, no one wants to have an uncomfortable conversation about why they're keeping their distance. So, if hygiene isn't something you've prioritized, it's time to step it up. Not just for others, but for you. When you feel clean and fresh, it boosts your mood, sharpens your mindset, and lets you focus on what really matters. It's a small effort with huge payoffs. At the end of the day, hygiene is one of those things you have total control over. It's not about vanity, it's about self-respect and the message you send to the world. Take care of the basics, and watch how much easier it becomes to connect with people, earn their respect, and show them the best version of yourself. Number 7. Relying on external circumstances for happiness. Relying on external circumstances for happiness, it's one of those habits that seems to sneak into our lives without us even realizing it. It's easy to think that once you get that promotion, that shiny new thing, or that perfect relationship, everything will finally click. Happiness will be yours. The thing is, this approach is like building a house on sand. Sure, it might feel solid for a while, but when the wind picks up or things change, and they always do, that happiness crumbles. Let's pause and think about this. If your happiness depends on something outside of you, whether it's people, events, or material possessions, what happens when those things shift, disappear, or fail to meet your expectations? You end up stuck, right? Constantly chasing the next external source of happiness, but never really feeling fulfilled. You might get a temporary high, but it fades, leaving you chasing again. And guess what? You'll always be chasing. From a Stoic perspective, this is where things go off course. Stoicism teaches us to focus on what's within our control and to stop hinging our well-being on things we can't influence. External circumstances are just that, external. They're constantly in flux, unpredictable, and beyond our grasp. If you tie your happiness to those, you're essentially giving up your own agency, your own power. You're allowing the world around you to dictate how you feel. It's like being tossed around in a storm without a rudder. It might feel like a wild ride, but you're not really in control of where you're headed. Think about it, happiness that's tied to something external is fragile. It's dependent on things aligning perfectly, and let's face it, life doesn't always work that way. Circumstances change. People change. The world changes. And if you're tying your peace of mind to that ever-shifting tide, you'll always be at its mercy. One day, something might go wrong, and suddenly, everything that once seemed to bring you joy feels empty. That's why true contentment can't be found out there, in the world of things and events. It has to come from within. The Stoics had a pretty profound understanding of this. They knew that real peace comes from cultivating a mindset that's grounded in virtue, wisdom, and self-awareness, not from what you own or who's around you. Marcus Aurelius, one of the Stoic philosophers, often reminded himself that he could control his thoughts and reactions, but not the actions of others or the events of the world. He didn't let external circumstances shake his inner peace. Instead of looking outward for happiness, he looked inward, cultivating an attitude of acceptance and calm. And here's the kicker, because of that, he wasn't dependent on the world to make him feel good. He found joy in simply living in alignment with his values. When you rely on external circumstances for happiness, you're putting all your eggs in a basket that's bound to break. When you tie your happiness to a promotion, or getting the approval of others, or acquiring things, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. Because these are all temporary. The promotion comes with new pressures, the approval from others fades, and the thrill of a new possession wears off. What's left then? If happiness is only fleeting, it becomes harder to find a lasting sense of fulfillment. But what if you could find happiness in something more stable? Something you can carry with you no matter what life throws your way. That's where the Stoic mindset comes in. When you focus on developing internal virtues, things like resilience, wisdom, and self-discipline, you create a foundation for happiness that's rock solid. No matter what happens outside, you're steady inside. Instead of waiting for the next external factor to boost your mood, you learn to cultivate peace from within. Here's the thing, happiness that comes from within isn't just about feeling content all the time. It's about finding peace and satisfaction even when things aren't perfect. It's about accepting life as it is, with all its ups and downs, and being able to find joy regardless of external circumstances. You learn that happiness isn't something you get from the outside, it's something you create within yourself. So, stop letting the world dictate how you feel. Sure, external things can be enjoyable, getting that new car, having a fun night out, or achieving a goal. But don't make the mistake of thinking that your happiness depends on them. Instead, focus on building that inner strength, on grounding your sense of well-being in the things you can control. Because when you do that, the outside world becomes less of a roller coaster and more of a steady path forward, no matter what. Number 8. Neglecting your health and well-being. Let's get real for a second. If you're neglecting your health, you're sending a loud, unspoken message to the world that you don't value yourself. And if you don't value yourself, how can you expect others to? It's harsh, but it's true. Whether it's ignoring your diet, skipping workouts, or brushing off your mental health, this kind of neglect doesn't just harm you, it changes how people see you. And not in a good way. When you don't take care of yourself, it shows. Your energy dips. You look tired, sluggish, and disorganized. You might even come across as someone who lacks discipline or self-respect. And here's the kicker, people notice these things way more than you think. You might believe no one cares, but trust me, they do. The way you treat your body and mind says a lot about who you are as a person. Health isn't just about hitting the gym or eating greens. It's a mindset. It's about showing up for yourself every day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. When you neglect your health, you're essentially choosing comfort over effort. And while that might feel fine in the moment, lounging on the couch, eating junk food, skipping another night of proper sleep, it adds up. The cracks start to show. You lose your sharpness, your edge. What's more, this habit bleeds into other areas of your life. Neglecting your health often means neglecting other responsibilities too. You skip deadlines, make excuses, and let things slide. It becomes a cycle. You don't feel good, so you don't perform well, which makes you feel worse. Before you know it, you're stuck in a rut, and climbing out feels impossible. But let's get deeper into why this matters beyond appearances. Stoic philosophy teaches us the importance of taking responsibility for our lives. It's about controlling what we can and letting go of what we can't. And guess what? Your health is something you can control. You can't stop aging or predict every illness, but you can absolutely influence how you treat your body and mind today. Neglecting your health is like handing over that control. It's saying, I don't care enough to try. Now, let's talk about the ripple effect. When you prioritize your well-being, people notice that too. They see someone who's disciplined, focused, and intentional about how they live. Someone who respects themselves. And let's be real, respect is contagious. When you respect yourself, others are more likely to respect you too. It's not about vanity or being perfect, it's about showing the world that you take yourself seriously. Neglecting your health also clouds your mind. Think about it, when you're constantly tired, stressed, or unwell, it's hard to think clearly. You're reactive instead of proactive. Small problems feel overwhelming because you don't have the energy to deal with them. On the flip side, when you're taking care of yourself, eating well, staying active, getting enough sleep, you operate on a different level. You think sharper, move faster, and feel more in control. And let's be honest, control feels good. Breaking the habit of neglecting your health doesn't mean overhauling your life overnight. Start small. Drink more water. Take a 10-minute walk. Swap one unhealthy snack for something nourishing. These little actions build momentum. And as you build that momentum, you'll notice a shift, not just in how you feel, but in how others respond to you. When you're healthy and vibrant, people are drawn to you. Your energy is magnetic. They see someone who's capable, reliable, and disciplined. Someone who values themselves enough to put in the work. And isn't that what we all want? To feel capable, respected, and in control of our lives? So, let's drop the excuses. Your health is your foundation. Neglect it, and everything else starts to crumble. Nurture it, and you'll find that every part of your life improves, your relationships, your work, even your mindset. Because at the end of the day, taking care of yourself isn't just a personal win, it's a statement to the world that you're here to show up, give your best, and live fully. And who doesn't respect that? Number 9. Trying to control things beyond your control. Let's cut to the chase. Trying to control things that are completely out of your hands is a losing game. Yet, so many people fall into this trap. It's like chasing smoke. No matter how much you reach for it, all you end up with is frustration. And here's the kicker, not only does it make you miserable, but it also makes people around you lose respect for you. Why? Because it's exhausting to watch someone obsess over things they clearly can't change. It's a little like watching someone yell at the rain, thinking they can stop the downpour through sheer force of will. Everyone else just stands there, silently thinking, why don't they just grab an umbrella? When you try to control the uncontrollable, it shows a lack of perspective. It's like you're screaming to the universe, I can bend reality if I just push hard enough. Spoiler alert, you can't. Life has a way of doing its own thing, no matter how much effort or energy you pour into resisting it. This habit isn't just annoying to others, it's harmful to you. Think about how much energy it takes to worry, fret, and try to manipulate things that simply aren't yours to command. You burn out. You stress yourself to the point of exhaustion. And for what? To feel like you're in charge of something that was never within your grasp to begin with? It's like pouring water into a bucket with a hole in the bottom. And here's the stoic truth, the only thing you ever really have control over is yourself. Your actions, your reactions, your mindset, that's your domain. Everything else? That's the Wild West, my friend. Other people's opinions, the weather, the traffic, the economy, these are all things you can influence to some degree, but you can't outright control them. The sooner you accept that, the freer you'll feel. Now, let's talk about what this looks like in action. People who try to control the uncontrollable tend to micromanage. They nitpick. They stress over outcomes instead of focusing on their efforts. And, quite frankly, it's draining for everyone involved. No one wants to work with or be around someone who's constantly trying to force situations or people to fit into their perfect little box. On top of that, this habit can make you seem insecure. Because, really, why would anyone feel the need to control everything if they truly believed in their ability to handle whatever comes their way? Trying to control the uncontrollable is often rooted in fear, fear of uncertainty, fear of failure, fear of not being good enough. But here's the irony, the more you cling to control, the more out of control you actually feel. So, how do you break out of this cycle? Start by asking yourself a simple question whenever you're stressed. Is this something I can control? If the answer is yes, great, figure out what steps you can take and focus your energy there. If the answer is no, let it go. Seriously, let it go. It's not easy, but it's necessary. Another key is to shift your focus inward. Instead of obsessing over outcomes, pay attention to your own actions. Are you showing up? Are you doing your best? Are you staying true to your values? That's what matters. Because at the end of the day, the result isn't always in your hands, but how you handle the journey is. Here's the beauty of this mindset, it's liberating. When you stop trying to control things you can't, you free yourself from a ton of unnecessary stress. You can actually enjoy the ride instead of constantly fighting against the tide. And, bonus, people will respect you more for it. They'll see someone who's grounded, self-aware, and wise enough to know when to act and when to step back. So, stop gripping so tightly. Trust yourself to handle what's yours to handle, and trust the rest to unfold as it will. There's power in surrendering to the flow of life. It's not giving up, it's stepping up. It's saying, I'll do my part, and the rest is up to the universe. That's real strength. That's real control. And, most importantly, that's the kind of energy people look up to, not down on. Number 10. Playing the victim. Playing the victim, it's one of those sneaky habits that can completely derail your personal growth. It feels almost natural sometimes, doesn't it? Life throws challenges your way, and it's easy to slip into the mindset that everything is happening to you, like the world is out to get you, and you're powerless to do anything about it. But here's the catch: when you constantly play the victim, you're actually giving away your power. And not just that, you're turning yourself into someone others look at with pity or disdain rather than respect. When you play the victim, you're not just saying, "Things are hard," you're saying, "I can't do anything about it." You begin to believe that life is happening to you, and you're just helplessly going along for the ride. But here's the thing, that mindset is one of the biggest traps you can fall into. Stoicism teaches us that while we can't control everything that happens to us, we can always control how we respond. The events in our lives might be chaotic, unpredictable, and downright unfair at times, but it's our response that defines who we are. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. But life's not always fair. Things happen that I don't deserve, and it feels like I'm the one who gets the short end of the stick. And yeah, that's true. Life isn't always fair. Bad things happen. But playing the victim isn't about acknowledging those struggles, it's about choosing to let those struggles define you, to give them all the power. When you lean into the role of the victim, you're saying that you can't rise above your circumstances. You're letting them hold you back, and in doing so, you're giving away control over your life. The Stoics, like Epictetus, were obsessed with this idea of separating what's within our control from what isn't. The things we can't control, like the actions of others or the events that befall us, are not worth getting caught up in. They're not the source of our happiness or unhappiness. What matters is our response. Playing the victim means ignoring that wisdom. It means giving away your agency, your ability to take control of the situation and shape your own narrative. And the problem with playing the victim is that it doesn't just affect your mindset, it affects how others see you. People might sympathize with you for a while, but eventually, that sympathy wears thin. When you constantly focus on how life is unfair or how you're always the one who suffers, others start to feel like they're dealing with someone who's stuck, someone who's unwilling to rise above their circumstances. It's not inspiring. It doesn't build respect. People don't want to follow or support someone who seems powerless to change their own life. And that's the kicker. When you play the victim, you're not just trapping yourself in a cycle of helplessness, you're also pushing people away. The more you hold on to that victim mentality, the more it becomes a part of your identity. You start to see yourself as someone who can't win, someone who's always dealt a bad hand. But this is a limiting belief. It's a belief that cuts off all possibilities for growth and change. You become stuck in the past, in the story of things that went wrong, instead of focusing on what you can do now to move forward. Playing the victim also keeps you from seeing your own potential. When you constantly focus on how things happen to you, you're not paying attention to how you can take action and make things better. It's a passive mindset. But life requires action. It requires you to take responsibility for your part in the situation, to make choices that move you forward, even when it's tough. Stoicism encourages us to rise above adversity, not by denying the hardships we face, but by acknowledging them and choosing to respond with strength and purpose. And let's not forget, playing the victim keeps you from building resilience. Every time you step back and say, "This is too hard, I can't do anything about it," you're teaching your mind to avoid challenges, to shy away from growth. But the more you face difficulties head-on, the more you build mental toughness. Every obstacle you overcome is another step toward becoming a stronger, more capable person. So, what's the takeaway here? Playing the victim is a habit that keeps you stuck in a cycle of helplessness and self-pity. It prevents you from taking responsibility for your life and your actions, and it makes others see you as weak or incapable. Instead of dwelling on what you can't control, take a step back and ask yourself, what can I control? How can I change my response to this situation? How can I grow from it? By shifting your mindset from victimhood to empowerment, you'll not only begin to see yourself differently, you'll also inspire others to do the same. Number 11, overcommitting without prioritization. Overcommitting is like loading your plate at a buffet. You grab a little of everything, and it feels great at first. But soon, you realize you can't actually finish it all. You're overwhelmed, overstuffed, and no one is impressed. That's the problem with saying yes to everything. It might seem harmless in the moment, but overcommitting without prioritization is a fast track to chaos, burnout, and, let's be honest, disappointing everyone involved, including yourself. Here's the thing, when you overcommit, you spread yourself thin. You end up juggling too many tasks, and none of them get the attention they deserve. It's like trying to hold water in your hands. You can only keep so much before it starts slipping through your fingers. People might admire your enthusiasm at first, but when you consistently fail to deliver or show up half-heartedly, that admiration turns into frustration. Nobody respects someone who bites off more than they can chew and then fumbles to keep up. Why do we do it, though? Why do we agree to take on so much? Sometimes, it's because we want to be liked. We think saying yes will make people see us as reliable, capable, or accommodating. Other times, it's ego, feeling like we can handle everything thrown our way, no matter how unrealistic. And let's not forget the fear of missing out. We overcommit because we don't want to miss opportunities or let a chance slip by. But here's the kicker, when you're drowning in commitments, you're not really showing up for any of them. It's the ultimate self-sabotage. What makes overcommitting even worse is the lack of prioritization. When everything is important, nothing is important. You're running from task to task, constantly putting out fires, but never actually making progress. It's exhausting. And it's not just about the work, you start losing respect from others because you're always overwhelmed, always late, and always scrambling. That's not the impression you want to leave. Stoic philosophy has a lot to say about this. It's all about focusing on what you can control and what truly matters. Marcus Aurelius would probably tell you to stop scattering your energy in 100 directions and focus on what's essential. The truth is, life is finite. Your time, energy, and attention are limited resources. Overcommitting without prioritizing is like trying to pour from an empty cup. At some point, you run out, and then what? You're left feeling drained, ineffective, and, let's be real, disappointed in yourself. Now, let's talk about how this habit makes others see you. When you overcommit, you might think you're coming across as hardworking or ambitious, but often it's the opposite. People see someone who's disorganized, unreliable, and maybe even a little desperate to please. It's not a good look. Contrast that with someone who knows their limits, chooses their commitments wisely, and follows through with excellence. That's the person people respect. That's the person people want to work with, trust, and admire. Breaking free from the overcommitment trap isn't easy, but it's worth it. The first step is learning to say no, and I get it, saying no is hard. It feels uncomfortable, maybe even selfish. But the reality is, every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. The question is, are you saying no to the things that actually matter? Another tip? Get crystal clear on your priorities. What's important to you? What aligns with your values and goals? If a commitment doesn't fit into those categories, it's probably not worth your time. And remember, prioritizing doesn't mean doing less, it means doing the right things. It's about working smarter, not harder. And here's the beautiful part, when you stop overcommitting and start prioritizing, you'll notice a shift. You'll feel less stressed, more in control, and way more accomplished. People will see you as someone who's grounded, focused, and intentional, a stark contrast to the frazzled, overwhelmed version of you they might be used to. That shift in perception? It's huge. It changes how people treat you and how you treat yourself. So, the next time someone asks you to take on one more thing, pause. Think about your existing commitments. Ask yourself if this aligns with what truly matters to you. If it doesn't, say no. And don't feel guilty about it. Saying no to the wrong things is how you make space for the right ones. And that's how you go from being overcommitted and overwhelmed to being respected and unstoppable. Number 12, lack of self-discipline. Let's not sugarcoat it. A lack of self-discipline is one of those habits that instantly makes people lose respect for you. It's like carrying around a flashing neon sign that says, "I can't handle myself." And let's be honest, no one's impressed by that. If anything, it makes people doubt your abilities, not just in the big, important areas of life, but even in the small stuff. Here's the thing about self-discipline, it's not just about following some strict, joyless routine. It's about proving to yourself and to others that you have control over your actions, your emotions, and your decisions. When you lack that, it's obvious. It shows in the way you miss deadlines, overindulge, or avoid challenges because you just don't feel like dealing with them. People pick up on that, and trust me, it doesn't make them think, "Wow, what a free spirit." It makes them think, "Can this person even be counted on?" And the truth is, they might not be wrong. Self-discipline is the foundation of everything meaningful. It's what helps you stick to your word, show up when it matters, and push through when things get tough. Without it, you're like a boat without a rudder, drifting aimlessly and hoping for the best. Sure, you might end up somewhere decent by luck, but chances are, you'll miss a lot of opportunities along the way. What makes this habit so damaging is that it doesn't just hurt your reputation, it hurts your potential. Every time you skip the hard stuff in favor of what's easy, you reinforce a pattern of avoidance. And here's the kicker, the more you avoid, the harder it gets to face challenges when they inevitably come your way. It's a vicious cycle, and breaking out of it isn't easy, but it's absolutely necessary. Now, let's talk about how this looks in real life. Lack of self-discipline shows up in a million little ways. Procrastination is a big one. You know you need to get something done, but instead, you scroll mindlessly, binge watch, or convince yourself that you'll start tomorrow. Spoiler alert, tomorrow never comes. Then there's overindulgence, whether it's food, spending, or distractions. You know it's too much, but you tell yourself it's fine. One more bite, one more dollar, one more hour wasted. And suddenly, those little indulgences add up to something big. But the most damaging part of lacking self-discipline? It's the message it sends to yourself. Every time you give in to procrastination, temptation, or laziness, you're telling yourself that your comfort is more important than your growth. That your future self doesn't matter as much as how you feel right now. And that mindset? It's a recipe for mediocrity. Now, let's flip the script. Building self-discipline doesn't mean becoming a robot who never takes a break or enjoys life. It's about balance. It's about knowing when to push and when to rest. And it starts with small, consistent actions. You don't need to overhaul your entire life overnight. Just commit to doing one thing every day that moves you closer to your goals. Start with something manageable. Maybe it's waking up 15 minutes earlier to meditate or plan your day. Maybe it's cutting back on distractions for an hour so you can focus on something meaningful. The key is to build trust with yourself. Show yourself that when you say you're going to do something, you'll actually follow through. Over time, those small wins add up. They build momentum. And before you know it, you're not just someone with discipline, you're someone who inspires it in others. Because let's face it, people admire self-discipline. It's a rare quality, and when people see it in you, they know you're someone who takes life seriously. So, if self-discipline isn't your strong suit right now, don't beat yourself up. But don't ignore it either. Start small, stay consistent, and remember this: every time you choose discipline over distraction, you're not just earning the respect of others, you're earning the respect of yourself. And that's the kind of respect that matters most. Number 13, living in the past or future. Living in the past or future, it's one of those habits that can silently creep into your life, making you miss the present, the only time that truly exists. It's like you're constantly either ruminating over what's already happened or anxiously anticipating what's to come, and all the while, the here and now slips away unnoticed. You might not even realize you're doing it, but it's a surefire way to rob yourself of joy, peace, and fulfillment. When you live in the past, you're trapped. You're stuck replaying events, rehashing mistakes, or clinging to the way things used to be. You might catch yourself thinking, if only things had turned out differently, or I could have done that better. But here's the problem: you can't change the past. You can reflect on it, learn from it, sure, but you can't live there. The past is gone, and by fixating on it, you're tying yourself to a time that no longer exists. In doing so, you limit yourself. Your energy gets drained, your focus is misdirected, and you miss out on the opportunities right in front of you. Stoicism teaches us that we can't control what's happened, only how we respond to it. Living in the past is the opposite of that. It's letting the past dictate your present, rather than taking control of your thoughts and actions in the now. On the other hand, living in the future comes with its own set of problems. It's the constant what-if game. What if things don't go as planned? What if I fail? What if I succeed but it's not as great as I imagined? The future is full of unknowns, and while it's important to plan and set goals, constantly worrying about what might happen is like trying to predict a storm that hasn't even formed yet. By focusing too much on the future, you're missing out on the beauty and the power of today. You're putting all your eggs in a basket that may not even exist as you imagine it. Living in the future is also a way of avoiding the present. If you're always focused on what's ahead, you're never truly present in your life as it is right now. There's a sense of dissatisfaction in that, a nagging feeling that you're always waiting for something, rather than embracing what's in front of you. Think about it: how many times have you found yourself counting down the days until something happens, thinking that once it does, everything will be better? But what about the moments in between? By focusing solely on the future, you end up missing out on the richness of the current moment. You're chasing something that may or may not come, instead of appreciating what's here now. From a Stoic perspective, both living in the past and the future are forms of distraction. They take us away from the present moment, where we actually have the power to act, think, and make a difference in our lives. The Stoics would argue that the only time that truly matters is the present, because it's the only time we can control. If you're consumed by what's already happened or obsessed with what's coming next, you're wasting the most important time of all, the now. And the kicker is that this habit of living in the past or future can make you look weak to others. When you're always looking back, it can come across as though you haven't moved on, that you're stuck in some old story. When you're always looking ahead, you seem like you're never satisfied with what you have. Either way, it's hard for people to respect someone who's not living in the moment. People respect those who take action, who deal with life head-on, and who embrace the present with all its challenges and opportunities. Living in the present is an art, and it requires practice. It's about engaging with life as it is right now, without letting the past or the future steal your attention. Stoicism encourages us to be mindful of our thoughts and our reactions. It's not about ignoring the past or pretending the future doesn't matter, it's about putting them in their proper place. The past is a lesson, not a prison, and the future is a possibility, not a certainty. By focusing on what's within our control, the present, we empower ourselves to live fully, without being bogged down by regrets or anxieties. So, how do you stop living in the past or future? Start by being more aware of your thoughts. Catch yourself when you're spiraling into what-ifs or replaying old mistakes. Bring yourself back to the present moment. Focus on what you can do right now, no matter how small, to move forward. Whether that's taking a deep breath, doing something productive, or simply appreciating what's around you, the present is where you can make a difference. In the end, it's not about erasing the past or ignoring the future. It's about giving them the proper perspective and focusing on what's happening right now. Because, as the Stoics would say, the present is where the true power lies. Number 14. Being overly busy without purpose. Let's be real, being busy for the sake of being busy is one of the most overrated traps we can fall into. It's almost like a badge of honor these days. People walk around saying, "I'm so busy," like it's some kind of flex. But here's the thing, if all that busyness isn't moving you towards something meaningful, it's just noise. And people can see right through it. They don't respect hustle for hustle's sake, they respect purpose, intention, and results. Being overly busy without purpose isn't just unproductive, it's exhausting. You spend your days jumping from one task to the next, crossing things off a never-ending to-do list, but at the end of it all, you're left wondering, what did I actually accomplish? Spoiler, probably not much. That's because busyness doesn't equal progress. It just feels like it. It's a clever little illusion that tricks you into thinking you're doing something important when, in reality, you're just spinning your wheels. Here's the kicker, this kind of busyness doesn't just waste your time, it damages how others perceive you. When people see someone who's always busy but never seems to have a clear direction, they start to lose respect. They see someone who's reactive instead of proactive, someone who's trying to look productive rather than actually being productive. It's like you're running a race with no finish line. Sure, you're moving fast, but where are you even going? The Stoics had a lot to say about this kind of aimless activity. They were big on focusing only on what matters, cutting through the noise, and living with intention. Marcus Aurelius, for instance, believed in doing fewer things but doing them well. Imagine if you applied that principle to your life. Instead of scattering your energy across a million meaningless tasks, you'd focus on the handful of things that actually move the needle. Sounds freeing, doesn't it? The problem with purposeless busyness is that it becomes a crutch. It keeps you from facing the bigger questions. Why am I doing this? What am I working toward? Is this the best use of my time? These aren't comfortable questions to ask, but avoiding them by staying busy only makes things worse. You end up filling your days with distractions instead of digging deep and figuring out what actually matters. Let's not ignore the toll this takes on your mental and physical well-being. Constant busyness, especially when it lacks purpose, is draining. It leaves you feeling burned out, unfulfilled, and disconnected from the things that truly make life meaningful. And ironically, the busier you are, the less time you have for reflection, for recentering yourself. It's a vicious cycle, one that leaves you empty-handed despite all the effort. And here's another harsh truth, people notice when you're busy without purpose. They see someone who's always rushing but never quite delivering. Someone who's caught up in a whirlwind of activity but lacks focus. Over time, that impression sticks. You don't come across as hardworking or dedicated, you come across as scattered, maybe even chaotic. And let's face it, that's not the reputation you want. Breaking out of this habit starts with a simple but powerful shift. Stop glorifying busyness and start prioritizing purpose. Ask yourself, why am I doing this? If the answer doesn't align with your goals or values, maybe it doesn't need to be done. Learn to say no to the tasks and commitments that don't matter. It's not about doing more, it's about doing the right things. This might mean cutting back, slowing down, or even stepping away from certain activities altogether. And that's okay. What matters is that you're aligning your energy with what's truly important. When you do this, you'll notice a shift, not just in how you feel, but in how others perceive you. Suddenly, you're not just busy, you're intentional. People will see someone who's calm, focused, and in control, a stark contrast to the frantic busyness they might be used to. So, let's ditch the busy for busy's sake mindset. Your time and energy are too valuable to waste on meaningless activity. Instead, embrace a life of purpose, where every action is deliberate and aligned with your goals. Not only will you feel more fulfilled, but you'll earn the respect of those around you. Because at the end of the day, it's not about how much you do, it's about how much of it actually matters. Number 15, reacting without reflection. Let's be honest, reacting without thinking it through is like playing darts blindfolded. Sure, you might hit the target once in a while, but most of the time, you're just throwing chaos around and hoping for the best. And you know what? It's not a great look. When you snap, overreact, or blurt out the first thing that comes to mind, it makes people question whether you have control over yourself. Spoiler alert, they probably won't be too impressed. Why does this habit make such a bad impression? Because it screams impulsiveness. It tells people you're more about knee-jerk reactions than thoughtful responses. And let's face it, nobody respects someone who seems like they're at the mercy of their emotions. It's not just the reaction itself, it's the lack of pause, the absence of that moment where you stop and think, wait, what's the best way to handle this? Here's the deal, life is full of moments that test your patience. Things don't go your way, someone says something you don't like, or you feel a surge of frustration bubbling up. What separates people who are respected from those who aren't is how they handle those moments. If you're quick to snap or lash out, people start to see you as unpredictable, or worse, immature. Now, don't get me wrong. Reacting is human. We all have triggers, and it's easy to let emotions take over when something catches you off guard. But here's the problem, when you let those emotions dictate your actions without reflection, you end up saying or doing things that you'll probably regret later. And the kicker? You can't take it back. Once the words are out or the action's done, it's out there. Think about the ripple effect this has. When you react without reflection, you might come across as defensive, rude, or even combative. People may start to avoid bringing things up with you because they're worried about how you'll respond. And over time, this habit can chip away at your relationships, whether it's with friends, coworkers, or anyone else in your life. On the flip side, learning to pause before reacting is a total game changer. That pause? That's where your power lies. It's the space where you can choose your response instead of letting your emotions choose for you. It's where you can decide, do I need to address this right now? Or am I about to say something I don't mean? It's not about bottling up your feelings, it's about channeling them in a way that's thoughtful and productive. And guess what? People notice when you take that pause. It shows maturity. It shows emotional intelligence. It tells people, this is someone who thinks before they act. And that kind of behavior earns respect, big time. So how do you start practicing this? It's simple in theory but takes effort in practice. First, notice your triggers. Pay attention to the things that set you off, whether it's criticism, interruptions, or something else entirely. Once you're aware of those triggers, you can start to anticipate them and prepare yourself to pause instead of react. Next, focus on your breath. It sounds cheesy, but it works. When you feel the urge to snap or react, take a deep breath. Count to 5 if you need to. That tiny moment can create just enough space for you to think clearly. Finally, ask yourself a question before you respond. Something like, is this worth the energy? Or what's the best way to handle this? Those few seconds of reflection can completely change the outcome of the situation and how people perceive you. At the end of the day, reacting without reflection isn't just a bad habit, it's a sign that you're letting emotions control you instead of the other way around. But the good news? You can change this. It's all about building the habit of pausing, reflecting, and choosing your response intentionally. And trust me, when you master this, people will notice. They'll see you as someone who's composed, thoughtful, and in control. Someone who can handle tough situations with grace and clarity. And that's a reputation worth having. So next time you feel the urge to react, pause. Breathe. Think. Then respond. You'll thank yourself later, and so will everyone else. Breaking bad habits isn't easy, but the rewards are life-changing. By embracing Stoic principles, you can rise above and become someone who commands respect and admiration. If you found value in this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more life-changing insights. And remember, true growth starts with self-awareness, so take charge today.